Good afternoon and welcome back to Growing Together, episode number 13. Today we have with us a really good friend, peer ministry leader, deacon at Calvary Lutheran Church, and youth director too, right?
Correct.
Tom Martin.
Yeah.
Tom, how you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for inviting me to come over and just sit down for a little bit and talk about one thing you and I both love talking about, and that's youth ministry.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I've been having, like when I start this job, like I just went straight to you my first weeks when I got here, and I was like, how you do this? Like what's the magic? Tell me what is the formula to this job? And you just told me you just need to love the kids and be there for them. So
I couldn't remember what answer I gave you, but that's the right answer. You just love kids.
Yeah.
And it all works.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming. I'm really glad that you're here. I'm really curious about your spiritual journey, right?
Yeah.
What took you to do youth ministry, but also you're a deacon, right?
Yeah.
You do peer ministry at Outlaw sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just excited to talk about those things. And yeah.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, fire away. Ask whatever you'd like. I'm an open book.
Tom, just really brief, tell me, how would people describe yourself?
I think people would describe me as probably being somebody who's fun.
Okay.
Maybe funny. But at the same time, I think they would think of me as somebody who is caring and compassionate and just really wants to look out for their best interests.
Okay. And that's being all, like, since you remember, or is it because, like, work or...
Well, I would say most of my adult life, that's the way it's been. But, I've always been kind of a chill person. I don't let things really bother me a lot, and maybe to a fault. But I think at the same time, I think I sort of work ahead by not letting things tear me down. Mm-hmm. So I do kind of stay chill in a lot of things, and I think that helps. But yeah, this is just something I think in my adult life I've really felt for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like you're a person that is outgoing. Like, you're really friendly also. Like, that's good for a youth person, right? Like a youth ministry person. I
think it's essential. I think it really kind of crosses bridges that otherwise exist, between them and us. And so you're a very friendly person as well. And I think that it just works for us to be able to be accessible. Mm-hmm. And I think being friendly makes us accessible. Mm-hmm. And if we're accessible, then kids will come to us and they'll just ask easy questions. And then sometimes they'll ask hard questions that we have to work through.
Yep. Yeah, it's just hard. And more when English is not your first language, it's harder, even harder, right? You try to give them something that they will feel that actually makes sense, and they sometimes, I think, I just confuse the people more.
Oh, well.
But I'm trying, man.
Right.
I think like the main thing is like show up for them. I think that's what they appreciate the most, is just to like have a person that listen to them and they can sit down and be like, this is how I feel. I think like the clue, or like the thing that you need to know is like, you don't need to have the answer, right?
Correct.
But we're the bridge, right? That's something that I learned from prayer ministry, right? Like, you're the bridge to take them to the person that actually had the answer. Maybe you're that person, but also like you can guide them to another person that will be able to help them more than you, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. I think a couple things come into play when you talk about, we're available. I think we have to be present for kids. We have to be around, like you're saying, you got to be around. If I just sit in my house all day long and I only come out on Wednesday nights to see kids, that doesn't work. And I think the other thing is that we develop trust between kids and us. And I think that pays dividends for us all the way down the road. Because if they trust us, they'll share things with us they may not share with friends, maybe even their family. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they talk to us about things that are just really private, and we keep them private. But we also have an opportunity to maybe reflect back a little bit on that with them and just say, you think it's a good idea or not a good idea, or why do you want to do that? Why do you think that's a good thing to do?
Yeah.
And let them answer those things.
Yeah. So, Tom, when you're not helping people or listening, right? What are your hobbies? What do you like to do?
Oh, one thing I am on fire for, and I always have been, is I love that God has given me the gift of being social with people. I can talk with people easily. And that's not always easy for some people, but I just have the gift for being able to walk up and just talk to people. And I also seek out opportunities to sit down like I am with you. I'm going over to Dunn Brothers Coffee in about 45 minutes to sit down with a couple that used to be in my high school youth group that are now married and young adults. And we're going to just talk about what things are going on. But I think also, one of the gifts that God has given me, or talents, as you say, is music. I love music. And so I love listening to music. I also enjoy singing. And I love playing the drums, but I don't like doing any of those alone. I like to be in groups when I do those things, but I just love those things, and they're great gifts from God.
Yeah. Wow. It seems like you're like how you are when you're not with people. Did that something happen in your mind that you're like actually seeking to be all the time surrounded by people, or you like also like a quiet time, or?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. I absolutely have a quiet time. And my quiet times are in the morning. I get up very early, and I'll have my coffee ready to go at about 4:30 in the morning, and I'll sit down at about 5. I know, take it easy. It happens. You get older, you'll just be like me.
Oh, God.
But I sit down at like 5 o'clock, and I'll have the news on the TV. I have a couple of like word games that I like to do on my iPad, but it's a time for me to just kind of sit and sit in the silence. And I think we know that that's so true, and it's so spiritual that we can be still, right? We can be still and know that He is God, and I'm not. I think there's this kind of centering that we have to do from time to time that brings us back to this place. For me, it's every day when I have to remind myself, you know what? I am just a person on this earth. And I love getting rid of all the noise for a few minutes in the morning. And then the day starts to come on and it gets noisier and I'm going every which way. But I do love that part. And the other thing that I like to do in the morning is I have about a 5 or 6 minute drive to work. It's not very far. But that is my earmarked prayer time every day. I might pray outside of that, but I pray and I get in my car, I turn everything else off, and I drive into work, and I just talk to God for 5 or 6 minutes. And about very specific things every morning. And so we have this great conversation. It starts my day off really, really well because I've already approached that stuff, and we're moving forward from there.
And all this, have you been learning to do all this during time, or this is how you were, like, did your parents tell you like you need to have a time with God like every day, or like this is, or were you when you were a kid or like a young person, like when we're young it's more difficult to us to like have that contact with God, right? For me sometimes it's really difficult to find that quiet time because I get crazy. I don't like to be quiet, like I can't, like I usually put like white noise sounds or whatever, and it seems that I'm afraid just to be quiet and let it be still, right? Yeah. Like it's just hard for me. Is this something that you learn, or this is something that it was like a gift, another gift that God gave you, and you like being able to do it without any problem?
Yeah, I don't think anybody, Emmanuel, ever told me that I should do this. So I like how your question is. It's a God thing. It's a gift from God, because nobody ever came to me and said, you need to carve out some quiet time every morning, Tom, and let that kind of guide your day. That never happened. So I think slowly but surely my life has evolved into a thing where I just seek out that quiet time in the morning, and now I treasure that so much. I get up before anybody else gets up, and it's just me, and I can have that alone time with God and just center. So it's something that I've picked up as I've gone along.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool. I hope like everybody at some point can pick up that too. Like I'm looking forward to be able just to have a quiet time and just be able to like feel the presence of God and be like, He's here, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's something like really spiritual, right? Just to sit down with a cup of coffee.
Yep.
I don't know if at 4:30 in the morning, but like at some point, right, during your day, and just be like, I just want to like feel that presence, just like, you know.
It's very powerful, and you know, when your hair is the same color as mine, maybe then you'll start doing that kind of stuff, huh? But it's just very powerful, and it's very, you know, it really is calming. I mean, it sounds like it would be calming, and it just really is calming.
Okay.
And so it's a great way to start my day every day, because our days don't stay calm all day.
Yeah, no, for sure.
We sometimes walk right into the bandsaw and just like, wow. Yeah. So it's good.
Yeah, and more with this job, you know, like being a youth director is just like you need to be at 9 p.m. on a game, or you need to be really early, or you know, like there's always moving times, and just like I think you need to find a time during your day to center and be like, okay, why we're doing this, what I need to be done, like I put all this in your hands, God, and just like help me to get through my day, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and I mean, you know as well as I do that you don't know from 1 minute to the next when you're going to get a phone call from somebody who is like they're just in a really bad place, and they just really need to talk to somebody. And when you come to the realization that they have chosen you to talk to, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
And so you have these great conversations with kids and other adults as well. But I think it all works because we let God work through us. Yeah. If I just try to do that on my own, it's going to be some pretty lousy advice I give people, and it's not going to be genuine, authentic kind of stuff. And so letting him work through me as a vessel, if you will.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So Tom, let's go through your spiritual journey.
Yeah.
How Tom Martin decided to be a youth director, a deacon. Where did this passion come from? If there was someone that was like really impactful in your life, how this worked?
Well, you know, so it's 2021 right now. We're in 2021. It was in 1998 that my wife and I decided to join the church, to join Calvary Lutheran Church.
Okay.
And then it was in 2003. So what is that? 5 years later, I joined the staff of the church. I was asked to join in a part-time position as a high school youth assistant, or helper, that kind of thing. And so that was in 2003. But then in 2015, Pastor Dwight Stensgaard, who at that time was the current pastor, he came to me and he said, listen, he said, have you ever thought about becoming a deacon? At that time it was called an associate's in ministry, but he said, have you ever thought about being a deacon? And I thought, why are you asking me that? I'm not somebody that would be like that. Mm-hmm. And there was something that he saw in me that I didn't see in myself. And I've thought back on that so many times, Emmanuel, that I think that's our job sometimes, is to see the gifts that other people have that they can't see in themselves. Mm-hmm. And then to talk about that. So I thought about that, and I prayed about that, and I thought, you know what, let's find out more about it. And so I checked with the synod, and they described what the process would be to become a deacon in the church and all this and that and whatever. And I thought, this feels right to me. When I grew up, backing up, you'd asked was it always like this for me? It wasn't always like this for me. I didn't grow up in the Lutheran church. I grew up in the Methodist church, and great group. I'm not dissing that church at all, but our youth group was pretty thin. And I'm not talking about numbers of kids. I just thought it was pretty thin. We'd go there, and I didn't feel like it was a good use of my time, if that sounds right. That sounds kind of snarky, but I just felt like I was never really learning anything. And I got more enjoyment out of going to youth group and just playing Foursquare and playing games with my friends than I did about learning about God and about the church and those kind of things. And so I think God had that happen to me intentionally, because I think he wanted me to sort of juxtapose today with back then and say, okay, so you didn't like that. If you didn't like that, why would you do that same thing with kids today? Because they're not going to like it either. Yeah. How are you going to change your ministry to not look like that
different?
Yeah. How are you going to make it better? And I thought, well, I don't know. But then of course, he talks to me, and I felt that he said to me that, it's all about relationships. Tom, it's not about sitting down and let's memorize 15 scriptures this week because that'll make us better Christians. It's not that it won't, but relationships are so important. And so that's where I've really poured myself into is, like I said, going to Dunn Brothers to meet with two people that haven't even been in high school youth for 5 years and catching up with them. It's all about caring and relationships with other people and working God into those conversations and not just making it all about me and them.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Like God is always present.
Always present.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's here somewhere, right here.
Yeah. It's just
same thing.
Yeah, man. And so you get that call from God, right? From your pastor being like, okay, I see this on you. Were you afraid? What was the first thought that is like, not me? Why not me? Why that, like, you're not fear of being like, why me? Like.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I think there was some of that was happening in my head. Like, I'm not a deacon. I'm not a church leader. If you asked me back when I was in high school and I was still in the Methodist church and all that stuff, and somebody said, hey, do you ever see yourself like working in the church one day? I would have been like, no way. On a 1 to 10 scale, it was a 1. There's just no way I could see myself working in the church. And I think that's the mysterious way that God works in the call to us to come. It doesn't have to be a deacon. It can be just somebody who's a friend of a friend, and you go out and you just come alongside people and just say, hey, let's get some coffee. Or, you know what, I just heard that your dad's sick. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Or if you want to. And, those kind of things that you want to do. Or I think that's all important. So, yeah, I was sort of mixed up about the whole thing when it started. When I got a call from God, and I knew that was that. But I'm just like, why? Why did you pick me?
Yeah.
I'm not the guy. There's such better Christians out there. You could have picked any one of them. But instead you asked me to do this job.
Yeah. It's just incredible because if we go back to scriptures and stuff like that, Jesus chose the more random people that Jesus could find and be like, follow me. I think you have something that, like, instead of be a fisher of men, or instead of be, it's like, God, why, and then, like, this brings me back, like, when I used to talk with my grandma, full Christian, 100%, like, she was a church leader down in Mexico and stuff like that. She was like, you know why? You're gonna work for God. And I was like, yeah, I will, Grandma, Somehow at some point I felt like a call to go to during vacations, go to a seminar and try to be like, what's like a seminar life be, right?
Right.
And I was going to high school and I didn't like it. I was like, this is not my call. So my grandma is like, don't worry, you're gonna work for God. I know it. I feel it.
Yeah.
And I'm here.
Here you are.
and I'm here. Like, it's just like the more you deny it, it's gonna happen.
Well, and you're right. In the Bible, so many times they would just set down their stuff and say, I'm going to follow you. Mm-hmm. That wasn't me. I'm like, I worked in management and human resource for many, many years before I finally got the wake-up call to say, you know what? Maybe there's something to all this tap on the shoulder I keep feeling that says, come follow me. Mm-hmm. And so it's just very cool. I've looked back on it many times and have never second guessed how my life has gone. It's been good.
Now, let's talk about peer ministry, Tom. Like,
sure.
I have had kids before. Ellie Knifer.
Yes.
Right? She's been part of your group of peer ministry, and she just talked marvelous things about that program,
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're here because, like, you can explain a little bit more about that. What's peer ministry? What is the function of that program?
First of all, she graduates this week.
Yep.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, it is.
I'm so excited for her. Yeah. I don't know what she's going to do next, but knowing Ellie, she's got it all pretty well planned out.
Yeah.
But peer ministry is this beautiful piece that comes along to us. It's about not me or you leading kids. It's about kids leading kids. So people their same age that are talking about, hey, you know what? Should we do this or should we do that? And they help make decisions for each other. Now, that being said, of course, we help to kind of put some things in the path in front of them and talk them through particular paths that they might choose or not choose. But it's still their decision, isn't it? At the end of the day, they're the ones that will make the decision about, do I want to do this or do I want to do this? This is not good. This is good. And I'm speaking from experience. I went down this path. I've gone down this path. And so I love this path. It's all going right path, and I'm doing the right thing for myself and for other people. But I think Pure Ministry just, in simple terms, tells us, how to make good decisions. It's the simplest things, like, how do I just walk up and introduce myself to a stranger, somebody I don't know, and I'd really like to know who they are. Starting conversations and then evolving into caring conversations and trust relationships and all those things that kind of gives them a real head start into adult life. They're already learning this when they're in high school. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a really valuable tool to have.
Yeah.
It's just when I took that certification, right? Just like changed the way that I see now my work. Like it's all about relationships. It's all about to like equip other people to do God's job. Like you're not alone. You're not the one that needs to be doing everything. You can have your team that will like help out and reach out and spread God's love. It's just so incredible. And then I think like the times that I had the opportunity to see you leading those things, I think like so impactful for those kids that still at this moment, I believe you are present in their lives.
Thanks.
So, yeah,
I hope so. I think we are always present in their lives. I think we make an impact, whether it's a big impact or a small one. I mean, I know with the kids that I've had, some are pretty small impacts, almost where I think, I don't even know if that person knows me. And I know that's not true. I think that's the devil trying to put that in my head that, you're not even affecting that person at all. And then a few years later, they'll come to me and they'll just have this profound thing they want to share with me. Or maybe later in life, they say, would you do my wedding? And I'm like, I'd love to do your wedding. But I never would have guessed a million years. I'd be doing your wedding. And so, I just think that there's all these things that we do with kids. You and I both do. And sometimes it's accelerated. There's some of those kids that just get it right away. And man, they're like leading the pack from the get-go. And others that it just takes a little longer for them to understand maybe what the whole thing is. I was one of those kids, just slow to get it. And like I said, I played Foursquare in high school youth, and that was my high point. And now I think we're seeing kids that are just hungry to find what it is that we have, this kind of lightning in a bottle we've got. It's God. We've got God here, and we can tell them about God and what a relationship it is, and just knowing that there's somebody there that's never going to beat us up mentally or emotionally, always there to pick us up, dust us off, and say, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. It's just hard. That phrase, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
We have a conversation and stuff about that phrase, and it's like, sometimes when you tell someone it's going to be okay, what that means for them. Right. It can have many things, or you're promising something, right?
Right.
And it maybe it's not gonna be okay, but you just need to have faith. That blind faith on God of like, everything is gonna be okay,
I think it depends on what kind of okay we're talking about too. If somebody's got cancer, it's terminal cancer, I can still tell them it's gonna be okay. Because you know what? Even though they're gonna die from that, Emmanuel, there's a good and a way, and maybe a not good way to live out the rest of your days, right? If it's okay, that means you're still very vibrant and very present, even though your life is starting to dim a little bit more and more each day, but it's all going to be okay. If you just crawl into a hole somewhere and die a couple months later, then that's that's kind of not okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that even though that sounds like a cliche kind of thing to say, hey, it's going to be okay, it's true. You can tell people all the time, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And sometimes they just really need to hear that.
Yeah.
I need to hear that sometimes.
I think everybody sometimes needs to hear that, right? From someone.
That's right.
From someone. It could be the most random person.
Right.
It's just like, it's going to be okay. And that like, just can change the whole day, right?
Right. Exactly.
This is a question that I did not give to you before.
Okay.
So I hope it doesn't like shake you, right? We're going through a time, right?
Yeah.
Where youth are more busy to come to church.
Yes.
Right? Sports. Jobs. And I'm not saying those things are bad, right? Like,
no.
Sports keep them out of trouble. Jobs help them to grow responsibility and all that kind of stuff. But it's the time that they have for God, it's less and less and less. So my question is, where do you see youth ministry? What is the change that is happening? What we're gonna need to do? Like, do you have any idea, right? Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I think that everything you said is very true. I think that if we go back even just like 5 or 7 or 10 years ago, the dynamic of the amount of time that you had to spend in church, far different than it is today. Mm-hmm. And I think that we sort of compete for time, don't we? I mean, that's sort of what it's like. And so sometimes I get caught in the trap of saying, then I need to make something like super attractive and fun that you'll say, oh, I'm going to go do that because they're going to have movie night or they're going to have a lock-in or, whatever it is. And sometimes I can cave into that a little bit, but most of the time I don't. And I just try to stay the path of saying, let's talk about things that really matter. I mean, really matter. We're going to close the door and you're going to talk with each other as a group about things that are really on your mind. And when we do that, and we do it every week when we get together, we pray for certain things that are on their minds. I pass around a clipboard and I just ask them to write down a person's name and why we're praying for that person. And they don't have to put the name of the person because sometimes it's just very, very personal. It's very raw. But the prayer requests we get are like a whole sheet like this, filled with things that we're going to pray for. It takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but it reminds me of how complicated and difficult of a world that our kids are walking through right now. Mm-hmm. Separated marriages, suicides, and cancer, and just all the things, relationship problems that they're having, problems at school, and just all the things that mount up against them. And suddenly we have this release on Wednesday night. We can lift that stuff up. And we can give those problems to God, and then we can let Him work on it. And it's kind of amazing what I hear maybe 2 or 3 weeks later from the same kids. They'll be like, hey, you remember that thing about an uncle who was dying? I'll say, yeah, I remember that prayer. They say, you know what? His cancer went into remission. Or that's not happening anymore. And so it's like, then we celebrate that God has stepped in and has shown Himself to them through this situation that we've got. So kind of getting away from the question, which was about how do we compete for time and I think we make things genuine, and I think we make them value and real. I think we put value into our Wednesday nights and we say, you know what? Let's hear from you. Let's hear about what's going on in your life. And then let's talk about it as a group. We don't do that every week. We look at videos that spark ideas in our minds and things like that. Mm-hmm. But we always have conversation every week. And I think that's one of the ways I can compete maybe with other groups that aren't, sports. I was in sports, so I'll pick on sports. I was big into football and stuff. But we didn't sit down after practice and talk. Mm-hmm. That wasn't who we were. We get out there and run into each other as hard and as fast and as long as we could for an hour. And then we'd go shower and go home. Well, This is different.
Yeah.
We come in, we walk through the door, we sit down, we have friendly conversations, and then we really kind of get into what's really on our mind.
So you would say that youth ministry is always going to be here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, no different than adult ministry. It'll always, if it's not here, it needs to be here. You know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You and I can't let that go away.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to protect that that youth ministry piece because it's so important to people later on in life.
Mm-hmm. So Tom, before we close this, it's been an amazing time. It's just we can keep going and going and going, right? And
yeah,
and just we can grab a coffee right now and just keep talking about all these things. I just have like a few questions that I want to ask a little bit more personal, and it's
sure.
like, for example, let's see. What do you think is your purpose?
Probably a couple of things that I can narrow it down to. My purpose on life is to affect other people, especially younger people, but affect other people through maybe what I say, probably more so what I do, because people are always watching to see, you know, is that person modeling the same thing they just got done telling me I need to do? You know, they say, be nice to your neighbor, and then they go out there and they, they curse out somebody on the sidewalk. That's not going to work. So I think that one of the things is always to be, working towards modeling and developing other people. And I think that my purpose is also just in the adult world and the whole world is just to help guide other people, which sounds kind of lofty, like I'm some big shot. I'm not. But I do like to try to guide people when they... maybe I see something in them that it strikes me wrong, and then this all sounds pretty pious, like I'm greater than everybody and I'm not. But if somebody's like using language that I don't approve of, I'll kind of call them out on it softly, but I'll be like, oh, language.
Why?
Yeah, language. And they get it. They understand it. And at the same time, then guiding them and saying, hey, I'm not picking on you. But, let's not take the Lord's name in vain, or let's not be blasphemous. And they'd be like, what does that even mean? So we talk about, what does that mean? And over time, you see that they've made that change. And it's amazing that you're making these little changes. If you have a giant ship like the Titanic and you need to make a right turn, it takes like forever. You're just turning slowly. You can't turn that great big ship fast.
Yeah.
It's the same in life. You just make these little changes that help them to move towards a better side of life, I think. So I think that's my purpose, just to guide people and to be present, be there.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
Really neat. Do you think younger you would be happy with what you have become?
Younger me would be astounded with what I've become. Younger me, church was not all that important to me when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And younger me, when I was in college, it got worse. And then younger me got a little bit older in college, started to figure things out. I figured out where I was kind of dropping grenades next to myself and blowing myself up. And so I started to learn not to do that anymore. And my life started to become easier, and it became more precious, and it just became more enlightening, because things were starting to work in my favor instead of against me. Well, it was me that was working against me. Yeah. So I had to figure out some of that stuff. And as a younger person, I never would have guessed that I'd be in ministry as an adult. And I've never looked back and thought, oh, I wish I wasn't doing this. I love my job. I love doing what I'm doing. I love this, that we can sit down and talk about stuff. I love that we get to go on trips and we get to go to camp. Mm-hmm. These are our jobs, and we get to go do those things that are so life-giving to you and I and anybody else that does what we do. It's amazing.
Yeah. Tom, last one.
Yeah.
I promise.
That's fine.
What is something that you know for sure?
Something that I know for sure is that my time on this earth is limited. I don't get to be here forever. And so I know for sure, Emmanuel, that I need to make every day count, some way or another. If it's having a conversation with somebody, if it's going to coffee with somebody, if it's preaching in church to somebody, if it's sitting down with you and having this conversation today, that matters to me. Because that's one thing that I know for sure. The other thing I know for sure is that God has a place waiting for me after this earth time is done. And that is so important to me as well.
Wow. Tom, there's no words that I can explain how happy I am that I have you here. For sure, people that watch this, if it's an older person, a young person, for sure they're going to get something out from this conversation from you. They're going to love you. Thanks so much for coming today. Keep doing your job, man. You do amazing. You're a role model. Really, though, I've learned a lot from you, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, I learned a lot from you, so you keep doing what you're doing, man. I love you.
I love you, man.
Too, man. You're awesome.
Thanks so much.
Hey,
guys, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.